Hi, I'm Adam and welcome to Adam Made It. Today I'm going to show you the first part of how I made this toy box for my dog. So the first step in this was for me to just do a little bit of a sketch up of what I sort of roughly wanted. This would allow me to measure out and start cutting my pieces. Next I had to sand down all the pieces. They're a little bit rough as I actually used some fencing panels for this. So here I am, just sanding them down, taking my time, making sure that they're all going to be nice and smooth. This is just a bit of a rough sand, as I'll do a final sanding before that I finish. Once all the pieces were jointed and sanded, I could then start measuring them out ready to cut. So I measured out one piece, cut it, and then I made a mark on my bench for where I knew I could put every other piece up to. That was going to be the same size, and that way, rather than, because I don't have any clamps on my miter station yet, it would just allow me to get accurate cuts repeatedly. Time for a coffee. So here you can see one part of the box that I've made up. This actually has mitered corners, but later on I changed that just because the table saw that I have is not very good and I'm waiting for a new one to come. So hopefully like that way I could get some better cuts. Here I am just marking out a cut that is going to be sort of like a cutaway in the front of the box. I just used my glue bottle to get some nice rounded edges and then cut this out on the bandsaw. So I actually have these, which I think I'm now actually going to use for the legs, but in a bit of a different way than what I would normally make things. The process that I used for cutting the legs was exactly the same as what I did to cut the front, back and side panels. I didn't want to use any clamps to glue this up, just for time really. So all I did was applied some glue and then I just used some brad nails. This just meant that I could now start attaching the legs to what's going to be the frame. I did this just by making sure that everything lined up nice and square. I knew that all the legs were exactly the same length and all of the side and the front panels were all exactly the same length. This means that I knew with the spacing here that I could get it nice and square and then it would all sit flush when it was all put together. So here's the box sort of roughly finished. I still need to put a bottom in it, which will be my next step. I'll start measuring things out, measuring out what size that I need to cut the panels, but I'll do this as a full measurement when it's all together rather than estimating what it was going to be just from the drawing. This means that it was going to be a lot more accurate. So because the way that I've made this box and put the legs in, it meant that I had a little gap all the way around. So I used the same wood that I used for the legs just to fill this gap in. I mated a piece up, marked it, cut it to length, added a little bit of glue, and then brad nailed it in place. So that's part one of how I made this box. In part two, I'll show you how I finished it and made a lid.